Hi, Algebra 1. Welcome to your first lesson. You'll see here behind my video that I have the same sheet that you do, and we're going to be on the first lesson exploring number magic tricks. So follow along as we go, answer the questions that come up as we go, and let me know if you have any questions while you're working. Here we go. The first problem we're looking at has this table. And it's one of those magic tricks where you start out by saying, think of a number. And they're going to show this in pictures every step of the way. And then we have three students, Ian, Maria, and Jacob. And we're going to follow what they do with their numbers every step of the way as well. When we first say think of a number, we're going to use this picture of a bucket because we don't know what's in that bucket. We don't know if there's 3 things or 10 things. We don't know. So it's just a bucket that represents an unknown amount. Then when we add 5, we still have our bucket, and then we're adding on 5 dots. We know exactly how many are there. Next step, when we multiply by 2, now we've doubled everything. Instead of 1 bucket, we have 2. Instead of 5 dots, we have 10. After I subtract 2, I still have my 2 buckets, but now instead of 10 dots, I have 8. I kept the dots in their same kind of order that they are here, just to keep things organized. Then the next step, we are going to divide by 2. So instead of 2 buckets, we're now going to have 1. And instead of 8 dots, we're now going to have 4. And then the last step says to subtract your original number. Our original number was just a bucket, right? We don't know what that number was. So if we subtract a bucket, all we're going to be left with is 4 dots. So let's go through Ian and figure out his numbers. So think of a number. Ian thought of 4 right here. Then he added 5 to get 9. If we multiply by 2, that's going to be 18. If we subtract 2 from that, we have 16. If we divide that by 2, we're going to have 8. And then if we subtract our original number, Ian's original number was 4. So 8 minus 4 is going to be 4. Okay, check your work here with Maria. If yours doesn't match up, read it again or ask a neighbor or myself for help. Let's look at Jacob. We don't know what Jacob's original number is, but we know that he did start at, or he had 14 at this point right here after he multiplied by 2. So let's go backwards. If he had 14 after he multiplied by 2, that means that he had to start with 7, because then 7 times 2 would be 14. And then if we keep going backwards, he had 7 after he added 5. So he started with 2 because then he added 5 to get 7, multiplied by 2 to get 14, subtracted 2 to get 12, and if we keep going, he divided by 2 then to get 6, and he subtracted his original number, so it would be 6 minus 2 would be 4. Now, if you're noticing that they all end up with 4, you're exactly right. And when we see what happened in the picture, we can see why they all ended up with 4. As we go down the page, we have a thinking out loud. We will sometimes go through these, sometimes we might skip them, but they're a good way for us to look at different ways to solve the problems. They're set up as a conversation between some students. It's always going to be Michael, Lena, and Jay. And let's just look at the first part of this conversation. Michael says, how can we subtract Jacob's original number? We don't know his original number. If you remember at the last step, you subtract your original number. Lena says, well, the table says that Jacob got 14 when the picture was this, 2 buckets and 10 dots. So 2 buckets plus 10 has to be or is 14. So then she draws this on the board to visualize that. I can see 10 of Jacob's 14. Here's the 10 of his 14. So the remaining 4 must be split between those 2 buckets. So then she takes away 10 from both sides. So she ends up with 2 buckets. It has to be equal to 4. And Michael says, oh, so 2 buckets equals 4, and Jacob's original number must have been 2, because 2 plus 2 would be 4. So pausing to think, if this equals 14, how do they know that just 2 buckets equals 4? Now remember back, it said that she took away 10 from both sides. Algebraically, we might show it like this. Maybe subtract 10 here, and I subtract 10 from the other side. And so I would still have my 2 buckets. has to be equal to 4. That's another way of looking at it. Okay, let's move down to number 3. We'll come back and do number 2 in a little bit. Number 3 says if 2 buckets equals 16, what is 1 bucket? Well, I know that it has to be the same thing in each bucket. That is something that you need to remember, is that when there's 2 of like the same symbol, like a bucket, it means that there's the same thing in both of those. And so what's the same number that if I add it together or have 2 of them, I get 16? That would be 8. And number 4, if 2 buckets plus 4 more equals 18, what is in the bucket? Well, if I know that 2 buckets plus 4 equals 18, I know that just 2 buckets has to be equal to 14, because here's 4, right? The other 14 is in those 2 buckets. And so then I know that 1 bucket is going to be 7, because 7 plus 7 would be 14. Try number 2 now on your own and start again when you're ready. Okay, I rewrote Carla's problem right here. 2 buckets plus 10 more is equal to 22. And what was her original number? Well, I know that this is 10, right? So the other part of my 22 is going to be 12, and that's going to be in those 2 buckets. So that means that each bucket needs to be 6. So her original number is 6. Okay, you're going to do the rest of these problems independently. Let me know if you need help or ask a neighbor. But when you get down to numbers 11 and 12, I want to give you some hints here. So, looking here, these 2 questions go together. We're going to find the pattern in the table. And the pattern, we want to look top to bottom in the table. So what's happening as we go from 7 to 9? What's happening as we go from 15 to 17? So on and so forth. And hopefully you see that as we go in the table from 7 to 9, 15 to 17, every single time we are adding 2. And so that rule can help you fill in the rest of the table. So for example, 39 plus 2 would be 41. As we go further in the table, you're going to have some that are missing on the top. And again, I need to think, what number plus 2 would be 3? That one would be 1. So finish filling in that table. We also want to create this picture right here, right? With the same rule of plus 2, what would that look like? And then number 12, if you're playing this trick on someone, what instruction would you give after think of a number? So think about that pattern, think about what's happening, and write down what you think. All right, algebra, great job making it through your first video. If you have any questions, again, please let me know or ask a neighbor, and go on to that next step that you see on Canvas for this lesson and keep it going. Nice job, guys.